Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio, and today I'm a little bit excited because this is a very special video. Ryan Devlin, who, as a side note, is a very lovely man, has chosen to support on the highest tier over at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. Go and check it out. The main tier there is you get bonus pods where you ask me questions and I answer them. But if you go to the highest tier like Ryan did, you get to go, hey Wassy, make me a video. And essentially treat me like a performing seal, who instead of balancing a balloon on my nose, will go and make you a video about a particular Pokemon topic. So Ryan sent me a message and he's like, hey, I like this deck. And after sitting down and having a look and playing around with it, I must say, I like it too. The crux of the deck is Zoroark Dusknoir, though it's got a few more tricks than that. So starting off with Zoroark, this is a Pokemon with whom we should all be quite familiar at this stage. Trade is an amazing ability, discard a card from your hand, draw 2, Riotous Beating for a double colourless energy, 20 damage for each of your Pokemon in play, at which point you may notice that the main stadium we see here is Skyfield. The more Pokemon you've got in play, the more damage Zoroark does. What makes this deck special, however, is that you don't need to get big one-hit KOs with Zoroark, hence why there's only 2 copies of Skyfield rather than 4, because you're playing Dusknoir, and Dusknoir here has got the ability Sinister Hand, and Sinister Hand basically says, as often as you like, you can rearrange the damage counters on your opponent's side of the field. We're all getting excited about Tapu Lele. Now, we don't know when the Psychic one's coming out, but the Fairy one is in Ultra Prism, and that, for 2 energy, as an attack, as a one-off, allows you to rearrange damage counters. Not quite so good. Dusknoir's good for many reasons. You can take KOs in the middle of your turn, which is good. Take a prize and carry on. But also here, if you're doing 120 damage with Zoroark, you make sure the Pokemon in the active has exactly 120 HP left using Dusknoir, so then you KO with Zoroark. You can make sure that there's no wasted damage counters. What you can also do here is move damage around to make sure that your opponent cannot end you to a low hand size. Then you take many cards, many prize cards, in one go. Although if you're going for that, do look out for your opponent playing cards like Ace Roller, like Max Potion, that will ruin that plan. And that is the crux of the deck. Hit with Zoroark, maybe you get a big one-hit KO, maybe you don't, but if you don't, you go for Dusknoir. And you're not in a huge rush to get Dusknoir out, because you don't need to move the damage on turn 1 and 2, maybe by turn 4, 5 and 6 you do. Now, there are some other Pokemon in this deck. There is Tapu Koko. Firstly, it's a free retreater, meaning it helps you to get the Pokemon you want into the active, but also for a double colourless, conveniently, because that's all we actually play here, you can do Flying Flip 20 damage to all your opponent's Pokemon. And then you rearrange that damage using Dusknoir. Look how it fits together. And then we've got Necrozma GX, for your once per game Black Ray GX. I mean, you need a GX attack index nowadays. Why not Necrozma? Being that this is in the expanded format, not 100% sure I made that clear earlier, but we are in the expanded format, you've got Dimension Valley. So you play a Dimension Valley, then you go 1 double colourless Black Ray GX, 100 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. And if they've got enough Pokemon on the field that are EXs or GXs, because Black Ray only does the damage to EXs and GXs, then you come in with Dusknoir and basically win the game the following turn, because there's so much damage on your opponent's side of the field, you can just rearrange it to take 6 prizes and win. Tapu Lele here, I mean, this is a deck that takes some setup. This is not a nice quick, I need a stage 1 with 1 energy, Glycerpod kind of deck. You need the setup here, so you do need to go for 3 copies of Tapu Lele. Even a 4th would not be out of place, although space is an issue here. But quite frankly, you need the consistency here. And the last card, we play 1 copy of Seismitoad. Once again, it works for double colourless energy, which is very nice, but also here with Seismitoad, you've got a Night March counter. Night March loves playing item cards, getting all those Night Marches in the discard. They want big, explosive turns, and what you can do with Seismitoad here is go, ha! Now you don't get any items. Now, there are two issues to this. First of all, Seismitoad has to give your opponent a turn to get rolling. Either they go first, they get a turn of items, then you can attack, or you go first, you can't attack, they get a turn of items, then you can attack. Either way, they're getting a turn. The other problem is that lots of these Night March decks are actually playing Pokemon Ranger. I know in a lot of videos I say nobody's playing it, but Night March and Expanded sometimes are. And that means that they can turn off Seismitoad, but of course they've got to get Pokemon Ranger without using items, which can be difficult. And now would be a great time to mention Karen, because really, Seismitoad isn't a turn 1 counter. Seismitoad is a player Karen. Both players put their Pokemon from their discards into their deck, then you play Seismitoad, you completely get rid of all the damage output for Night March, then you start using Quaking Punch. That's how it works as a Night March counter. Yay for Karen! Now, if we look at the energy here, it's just 4 double colourless energy, and that's a bit of an issue. You won't always find it. Sometimes you'll have a couple prize, sometimes you'll discard them and not be able to recover them, etc. But that's one of the risks you take with a deck like this. You have got a whole bunch of Pokemon that attack for a double colourless energy. The good news is that gives you a whole bunch of room in your deck to use for other cards. But the bad news is there will be games where there's nothing you can do because you don't have the energy. Now, in terms of a spec here, it's super easy. It's computer search. When you need to set up a deck, like you do here, computer search is the obvious option. In any deck that relies on special energy, like double colourless, because there's no other way to search it out reliably, you've got to play computer search. Well, there's 2 reasons right off the bat. There is no, I think, argument here otherwise. There's no dowsing machine malarkey. This is a computer search deck. I don't think there's any other viable option for the Ace spec. And then we obviously Karen, like I've mentioned. We don't need to go into that. We see Ace Roller, pick up one of your damaged Pokemon. Not the most important card here, but it's always nice to be able to heal one of your Zoroark. We see 3 copies of Bridget, and Ryan told me, look, I took this from Tord. Tord Reklev won the London International Championships playing free Bridget. Free Bridget and free Lele means you're going to get that turn 1 Bridget. And in a deck like this, you need that turn 1 Bridget. 2 copies of Guzma, because we need to be able to drag bench Pokemon active to KO them. Obviously, we'd like more than 2 Guzma, but firstly, we're playing 4 Versus Seeker, like every deck in Expanded, and secondly, space is an issue. And we should also mention here, for Versus Seeker, like I've said, any of these support accounts that look a little bit low, and several fit that category, always remember you've got Versus Seeker here, so your 1 copy of Karen can actually be 5 copies of Karen. Speaking of one-offs, we see 1 Hex Maniac, turns off your opponent's abilities, yay! Sometimes that's useful, Versus Seeker reuses it. And 1 copy of Mallow, which is a bit deceptive. You see, Mallow in a deck like this is phenomenal. Mallow says you get to take any 2 cards from your deck and put them on top of your deck in any order. Then you use Zoroark's trade to guarantee that you draw those 2 cards. Rare Candy, Dusknoir. We're only playing 1 Rare Candy, but Mallow means that we can. Getting that Dimension Valley double colourless combo for Necrozma says that we can. Heck, even just getting your double colourless here is great. And then obviously we see N and Professor Sycamore. They are the best consistency draw supporter cards we have. And between Tapu Lele and Versus Seeker, plus computer search, we can play lower counts than we usually would here. In terms of Stadium, we've got 2 Skyfield, just to have extra bench space. And it's not actually just for doing extra damage with Zoroark, although that's good. It's also because you need quite a bench here. You want multiple Zoroark, you want your Dusknoir, you've got to be using your Tapu Leles. This isn't just for doing extra damage with Zoroark, although it is. It's also just giving you the bench space you need to run the deck. And then 1 Dimension Valley purely for Necrozma, but between Computer Search and Mallow, it shouldn't be the most difficult card ever to actually get when you need it. And the rest of the items here, a couple of Floatstone, Dusknoir especially, you don't want to attack, it's got a high retreat cost, you need to be able to get these Pokemon out the active to continue attacking, that's where Floatstone comes in. 1 Field Blower to turn off Garboda principally. Now, 1 here is a slight problem, because Garbona hurts this deck because it turns off Sinister Hand, and that's a very bad thing. The one thing I will say is we're playing 4 Puzzle of Time here, which means that actually it's not 1 Field Blower. It could potentially be 3 Field Blower, which is a lot better. That is one of the counts that makes me a little bit nervous, but then again, we're trying to do a lot in this deck. We can't have it all. 1 rare candy is not as bad as you think it is, because you don't need a turn 1 or turn 2 Dust Noir. You need a turn 3 or 4 Dust Noir. In theory, by that point, you've got multiple Zoroarks, and you've got Mallow, and you've got Computer Search. So actually, as bad as that might look at first glance, 1 rare candy is not the end of the world here. 1 special charge to recover special energy. Now this, I would like a second one of these before a second rare candy. I think special charge is amazing in this deck because you're hyper reliant on double colorless. But again, space. And 4 Ultra Ball because, you know, it's Ultra Ball. You need to search out your Pokemon. It is the best Pokemon search card we've got, so that's what you play. And this is a kind of deck where if you get a couple of turns to set up, you win. You've got your Night March counters with Seismitoad and Karen, and then of course you've just got the best Pokemon in the game. You can take big one-hit KOs with Zoroark Skyfield, or you can spread damage around and use Dust Noir. The biggest issues here are going to be consistency and energy denial decks, because you're playing double colorless, but honestly, ladies and gentlemen, you're not quite playing enough. There are other decks like Xurkitree here, which could be a bit of a problem, because of course Xurkitree stops attacks from any Pokemon that have special energy, and you're only playing special energy. But having said that, drop a Hex Maniac, big attack with Zoroark, you can probably get through it if you play it kind of nicely. And of course, you're relying on a large bench, and whenever you're relying on a large bench, Sudowoodo could always be a bit of an issue, but then again, you can always KO it, or you can just play Hex Maniac to get extra bench spaces for a turn, or you can, as long as you're set up, operate with 4 bench spaces. It's not ideal, but it is possible. The other thing I should mention here, of course, you've got Item Lock in Expanded with things like Seismitoad and Trevenant. Not the end of the world, but it does turn off your rare candy, special charge, etc. If you get set up all right, you can beat Item Lock, but then again, that's pretty much any deck against Item Lock. Huge thank you to Ryan, firstly for supporting on Patreon, and secondly for sending me this deck list, which is really interesting, and I love it. But as always, I want to know if you guys love it. That's what the comment section is there for. Give me your opinion on this deck. Tell me if you think it could be good. Go nuts! Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWossy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.